Sweat clung to Nia Jackson's neck as she stepped from the Detroit diner, texting beneath the sticky July sky. Then came the bark. Loitering. Officer Vince Carver slammed her against the wall before she could blink. She protested. His fist cracked her jaw. Blood splattered the concrete. Just then, her father, Marcus Tate, emerged, badge flashing. Detroit's new chief of police. He cuffed Carver, but backup rolled in, smirking, circling. What would they do to a black chief's daughter? Nia clutched her face, dazed, terrified. If this opening hits you hard, subscribe now, because what's coming next will blow this wide open. Flames still danced behind Nia Jackson's eyes as she sat trembling on the edge of her torn-up bed, the acrid scent of spray paint and scorched rubber clinging to her skin like smoke. Hours had passed since the attack, since masked figures slashed her tires, tagged snitch across her house, and hurled a brick through her bedroom window, glass exploding like shrapnel as she dove for cover. Her jaw, still purple from Officer Vince Carver's punch, pulsed with a throb that never quite dulled. Her father, Marcus Tate, the new black chief of police in Detroit, had arrested Carver just days before, live on camera, badge gleaming, crowd filming. It should have been the end. Instead, it was only the beginning. Now they were targets, not just from strangers, but from within the very department Marcus swore to reform. Nia could see it clearly now. The badge didn't protect them. It painted a bullseye. Downstairs, her father double-checked locks he used to trust, his gun never out of reach. Every creak of the floorboards, every blink of the streetlight outside felt like a countdown. And when the first threat showed up in her DMs, "Burn her out," it read, she knew it wasn't bluster. It was a warning. The next strike would be worse. She pressed her fingers to the bandage on her cheek, blood still crusted at the edge, a souvenir from the bricks shower. The police union went on television that morning, twisting the video of her assault, calling her combative, accusing her of provoking a decorated officer. Paul Denson, Carver's union rep, smiled for the cameras with a face slicker than oil, saying she'd played the victim. Nia watched him lie through his teeth as her father stood beside her, his body stiff, his eyes burning with a fury he could no longer afford to show. He'd already been warned, "Back off or lose your badge." But Marcus didn't flinch. He pressed harder. And Nia? She hit record. She told the truth. "I didn't fight," she said into her cracked phone camera. "I said sorry and he broke my face." Her voice shook. Her post went viral. By noon, protesters surged down Woodward Avenue, their signs blunt and loud. "Protect black girls, fire Carver now, justice for Nia." Nia stood in the window watching them march, her hand over her heart, her lip still split, a symbol now whether she wanted to be or not. But hope is a fragile thing in a city built to swallow it. That night, as she and Marcus sat in the living room, TV flickering, curtains drawn, the calm shattered. Tires crunched the gravel outside. Dozens of trucks, Confederate flags flapping in the wind. White men, jeering, spitting, laughing. Rocks smashed the windows. One protest sign, torn and burnt, landed on the porch. A bottle followed. Gasoline. Fire. The porch went up. Marcus grabbed his gun. Nia hit the floor. She filmed through a sliver in the curtain, her fingers shaking, her voice whispering, "They're back." They barely got out the flames in time. Backup arrived 20 minutes too late. The men were gone, But the damage remained. Ashes where her steps used to be. Her blog post that night didn't hold back. She named them. The attackers. The silence of the department. The betrayal. "If I disappear," she wrote, "know I didn't lie." Her post was shared 30,000 times in 2 days, and just when it felt like the city was waking up. When news anchors started asking real questions, when officers were suspended pending investigation, Carver's team made their next move. A thick envelope arrived with no return address. Inside, a fake police report from a year ago, accusing Nia of shoplifting. A blurry photo attached, similar enough to raise doubt, not enough to prove truth. Before they could even call a lawyer, the front door crashed open. SWAT, tactical gear, guns drawn. They dragged Marcus across the floor, slammed Nia into the wall. One officer pulled a bag of white powder from her drawer, held it up with a grin. "Gotcha." She screamed it wasn't hers. They didn't care. They cuffed her, hauled her out. Neighbors watched, filming again, but no one stopped them. The media spun it fast. "Teen activist busted for drugs," one headline read. Nia's truth was collapsing under their lie. Her father's pleas meant nothing. He was silenced with a bruised jaw and a bogus interference charge. But even in the holding cell, Nia didn't cry. She bit her lip, curled her fists, and stared at the concrete wall until it blurred. They were trying to erase her, frame her, break her. But she refused to be erased. And the story doesn't stop there, because days later, the truth exploded back. A second camera, hidden above the diner door, had recorded everything. Not just the punch, the smirk, the laughter, the excessive force. Nia found it herself, snuck back into the diner with nothing but a hairpin and a heart full of fire. That footage blew Carver's defense to pieces. The DA revoked his bail. Protesters took to the streets again. Nia was framed, trended across the country. The firebombing, the drugs, the lies. They didn't bury her. They amplified her. But Carver wasn't finished. Days before his trial, a mob set the rally stage on fire. Dozens were injured. Her best friend, Tasha, found in an alley, her name carved into her arm as a warning. Nia didn't sleep after that. She wrote. She leaked documents. She exposed Carver's network, named officers, dropped files. The blog, Truth on 8 Mile, became her weapon. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was the front line. And when Carver's crew framed her again, this time for a bank robbery, Nia went underground with Marcus, hiding in basements and abandoned warehouses, hunted like fugitives. Every news station called her a terrorist. Her face was everywhere. But that didn't stop her. She hacked Carver's voicemails, exposed his militia ties, leaked audio that made national headlines. And when they finally found Carver in that grimy riverfront warehouse, Nia walked in, gun shaking in her hand, and faced the man who tried to destroy her. Marcus was there too, bloodied, barely alive. Carver smiled, pulled a final stunt, a gun to his own temple, a suicide in front of the feds, framed to look like Nia pulled the trigger. They dragged her out in cuffs, branded her killer, labeled her a radical. But if you watched closely, if you looked past the headlines, you saw it. Her eyes, calm, angry, focused. She wasn't beaten. Not yet. She had one more plan. And what happens next? Will Nia expose the final piece? Will Marcus survive long enough to testify? Will the truth claw its way through the lies again? Hit subscribe if you stand with Nia Jackson. Smash like if you're done with the lies, and drop a number 1 in the comments if you believe one voice can shake a system built to silence it, because this fight isn't over, not even close. Nia Jackson sat stiffly on the courthouse bench, her bruised jaw clenched tight, the antiseptic-scented air thick with tension as fluorescent lights buzzed above her. She looked smaller than the fire she'd unleashed just weeks ago, diminished but unbroken, as the judge banged the gavel and the trial of Vince Carver, the officer who had cracked her face in broad daylight, officially began. Cameras flashed, murmurs echoed off marble, and beside her stood her father, Marcus Tate, Detroit's first black chief of police, whose badge gleamed with a false sense of protection. That punch outside the diner, the one captured on a shaky video now burned into the conscience of a divided city, had lit a fuse neither of them could snuff out. She was only 17. She hadn't asked for war. She'd asked for breakfast. She had said sorry and gotten bloodied for it. And now she sat not as a victim of state violence, but as a pariah, expelled from school, labeled a liar by the police union, hunted, firebombed, framed for drugs, accused of theft, and dragged through the mud by a system allergic to accountability. As the trial began, Nia stepped up to the witness stand and stared into the eyes of her attacker. Carver's face was blank. No regret, no fear. Just calculation. A predator watching prey. She recounted the moment. The heat of July, the neon diner sign flickering behind her, the sudden bark, the slam into the wall, the explosion of pain in her jaw. "I didn't fight," she said to the jury, her voice steady but trembling underneath. "I just apologized. He hit me anyway." And the courtroom fell into silence as the prosecutor played the diner footage again, this time from the hidden camera she had risked her life to retrieve, revealing everything in crisp, irrefutable detail, her limp body sliding to the sidewalk, Carver's smirk, the crowd's gasp. A wave of murmurs rolled through the room. For once, it felt like the truth was winning. Marcus took the stand next, presenting damning evidence. Rollins, the deputy chief, had been in contact with Carver the night of the arrest, and a trail of payments, emails, and internal transfers pointed to an organized cover-up. As Rollins's name rang through the chamber, journalists scribbled furiously. By that afternoon, Rollins was forced to resign. The public roared. Justice, it seemed, was clawing its way out of the darkness. For a moment, Nia let herself believe. After the hearing, she walked past a crowd of supporters chanting her name, people she didn't know, many who didn't know her, holding signs that read, "We believe Nia and no more Carvers." And she felt a flicker of something like hope, delicate but real. But pain, for girls like her, wasn't linear. It was recursive. It returned stronger every time it was denied. The next morning, a new headline shattered that hope. Mistrial. The judge, an aging man with a silver mustache and a soft spot for technicalities, declared the diner camera footage inadmissible. Chain of custody was violated, he claimed, though it had been handled by Marcus directly, documented, and submitted within the law. Carver's lawyer smirked, while Carver himself, still in cuffs, winked. Nia's breath caught in her throat. She turned to her father, whose knuckles had gone white. "They sold us out," Marcus whispered. And in that moment, Nia saw not just the collapse of her case, but the betrayal of a system she had been taught to trust. When they stepped outside, reporters mobbed them, not with empathy, but with doubt. "Nia, did you lie about the drugs? Do you regret posting the video now?" She pushed past them, swallowing the lump in her throat. Back home, a thick envelope was waiting for her, marked confidential. Inside was her expulsion letter, effective immediately. For safety reasons, it read, "Due to your association with violence." The school board had received anonymous threats, doctored emails claiming she intended to bring a gun to class. Her reputation had been shattered by the same machinery that had once called her brave. She stared at the letter, the ink smudging under her thumb, and felt the weight of finality. Her education stolen, her truth twisted. That night, Marcus punched a hole through the wall, not out of rage but out of despair. "What do they want, Nia?" he asked. "For you to disappear?" And the terrifying answer was yes. But it got worse. Days later, during a brief moment of calm, while Marcus cooked and Nia updated her blog, her screen lit up with an emergency alert. Breaking. Fugitive teen involved in armed bank robbery. A grainy photo of her face flashed across every station. Her ID card had been planted at a crime scene she had never been near. This wasn't just retaliation. This was erasure. Before she could process it, SWAT tore through their door again. Boots thundered up the stairs. Marcus was shot in the leg as he tried to protect her. A baton cracked against her shoulder, sending her sprawling. They dragged her outside, her mouth screaming, her body limp, her wrists bound in cuffs that felt more like shackles. The city watched in silence as Nia, the girl they once cheered for, was framed as a criminal, a terrorist. Her blog was shut down. Her phone seized. Her story rewritten by men who sat in leather chairs and inked lies into legal records. She went underground after that. A journalist named Sarah Klein believed her, leaked her story to a national outlet, and sparked a federal investigation. Nia and Marcus hid in basements and warehouses, fugitives in the city they tried to save. Her bandaged arm ached constantly from the SWAT raid. Marcus's wound festered. They were both bleeding, both hunted, both holding on by threads. And then Jamal Hayes happened. A black officer, seemingly an ally, arranged a safe house. He said, "I've got your back, Chief." He brought them water. He guarded the window. He joked with Nia, told her she reminded him of his daughter. But he was a mole. When the militia showed up, camouflage, rifles, grenades, Jamal lowered his gun and smiled. "Sorry, Chief, had to." And then he walked away as they firebombed the attic. The explosion shredded the floor. Shrapnel tore through Nia's leg. Marcus collapsed again, blood pouring from reopened wounds. She dragged him through flames, choked on smoke, screamed for help until her voice cracked. When firefighters finally arrived, they barely made it out alive. The photos of the blaze hit the news within hours. Sarah published the audio recordings Nia had hacked. Carver's voice ordering attacks, naming officers, laying out plans. The feds moved in. Carver was rearrested. Rollins was indicted. The protests swelled again, and for one blinding second, Nia saw it. A way out. A crack of light. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot, and Carver, now locked up, had orchestrated a final play. A bomb detonated at the Detroit police precinct during a press conference Marcus was supposed to attend. Multiple officers dead, and somehow, impossibly, the story shifted again. Kiana Brooks, suspected in domestic terror attack. Her mugshot splashed across CNN. The old bank robbery frame resurfaced. They said she had motive. She had history. She had radicalized. Carver vanished during the chaos, escaped custody, and Nia's name was now synonymous with death, with terrorism. Her truth buried under rubble and flame. She tried to run, but they found her. They always did. When they dragged her into custody for the final time, her body was a roadmap of pain. Shrapnel in her thigh, bruises along her ribs, wrists rubbed raw from zip ties. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She looked straight into the camera as they shoved her into the van. She smirked, not out of defiance, but because she knew this wasn't justice. This was performance. She was the scapegoat, the sacrifice. Carver had won with a suicide, a bullet to the temple, a blood-slicked warehouse, her prints on the gun, his final trap. Even in death, he twisted the narrative one last time. Now Nia sits in a solitary cell. 23 hours a day, the lights always on. Her name, once a banner for justice, now a warning. A threat. A lesson to any black girl who dares to speak, to film, to fight. She sees herself on the TV in the warden's office. From teen hero to terrorist, how Nia Jackson fooled the nation. She hears her classmates whisper her name with disgust. She gets letters, some from supporters, some from monsters. One simply says, "Burn, snitch." And yet, she writes. With every breath, she writes, "Truth on 8 Mile lives again." Passed to Sarah, to the protesters, to the kids who still chant her name, even as the government calls her a villain. Marcus, limping, scarred, hunted, has vowed to clear her name, to dismantle the lie. But Nia knows what it really takes. It's not a badge. It's not a blog. It's not even a bullet. It's belief. In yourself. In the fight. Even when it costs everything. So if you're reading this, if you've made it this far, don't just feel bad. Get loud. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you still believe in Nia's voice. Hit like if you think the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was designed. And subscribe if you're ready for what happens next. Because Nia's not done, not by a long shot. And this war, it's only just begun. Nia Jackson hunched over her cracked phone screen in the dim glow of her shattered bedroom, the August heat pressing through boarded windows like punishment. Her bruised jaw throbbed with every breath, but she ignored the pain, her fingers swiping back to the diner video for the 100th time. Her body crumpling in slow motion, blood pooling beneath her like a shadow too dark to outrun. And yet, something in the corner flickered, barely noticeable before, now screaming for attention. She paused, zoomed in, her pulse spiking as she spotted it. A tiny lens tucked above the diner's entrance, a second camera no one had mentioned, no one had accessed. Her heart kicked in her chest like a warning. What if it recorded everything? What if the truth, the raw, undeniable truth, had been waiting quietly in the background, overlooked, dismissed like she had been? Without thinking, Nia snatched her shoes, slid out the back door, and vanished into Detroit's haunted streets, the night swallowing her like a secret. Marcus Tate, her father, the city's embattled black chief of police, slept fitfully on the couch, one arm draped protectively over the loaded handgun he kept within reach since the firebombing. He never heard her leave. The city around her pulsed with tension, empty patrol cars lurking like ghosts, broken streetlights flickering like nervous heartbeats, the air thick with ash and old injustice. She reached the diner with her heart in her throat, hairpin clutched between sweat-slicked fingers. The back door lock clicked open under her steady hands, adrenaline sharpening her into something more than a teen girl. The place reeked of grease, fear, and forgotten truths. She climbed onto a stool, reached high, and pried the black box loose, its blinking light steady. It saw everything. She ran. Back home, she burst into the living room, shaking Marcus awake. "I found it," she whispered. "It saw everything." He didn't hesitate. He plugged it into his laptop, his fingers moving with the precision of a soldier rearming. And there it was. Crystal clear footage of Officer Vince Carver punching Nia so hard her head snapped sideways like a broken doll, her limp frame dropping, blood spraying across the sidewalk. No angle to deny, no narrative to twist, no smear to survive it. Marcus's jaw clenched, his voice a low growl. This changes everything. When by dawn, he stormed the precinct and slammed the footage on the DA's desk, demanding Carver's bail be revoked. "This is beyond doubt," he said. And for the first time, it felt like the truth might win. Nia stayed behind, pacing across scorched floorboards as her phone buzzed with notifications. Breaking. Carver's bail revoked. And she collapsed onto the couch, laughing through the tears, raw and unsteady, a victory carved from weeks of bruises, betrayal, and blood. She texted her best friend, Tasha. "We got him." And for a rare moment, her chest felt light. But victory, for a black girl like Nia, was always a glass thread, glittering, fragile, waiting to shatter. That night, a sharp knock rattled the front door. She opened it, heart racing, expecting a neighbor or a protester. Instead, there was only a note taped to the wood, her name scrawled in red ink like blood. "Drop the case or she's dead." She scanned the street. Empty, but not safe. She called Tasha. No answer. Called again, voicemail. She screamed for Marcus, who grabbed his gun and keys, his face already pale with dread. They found Tasha hours later in a graffiti-tagged alley off Gratiot, slumped beside a dumpster, her face swollen, her arms slashed so deeply that bone peeked through the gore. Carved into her flesh. Nia, etched with a blade meant to cut more than skin. Nia collapsed to her knees, her hands trembling above her best friend's body, too afraid to touch her, too broken to look away. Tasha's eyes fluttered open, a whisper escaping her cracked lips. They said stop. And then she passed out. Nia sobbed uncontrollably as Marcus shouted for an ambulance, pressing his shirt against the wound, his eyes hollow. Paramedics arrived, too late to undo the pain, but just in time to keep Tasha breathing. Nia rode to the hospital with blood on her jeans, her stomach twisted in guilt so sharp she couldn't breathe. This was because of her. This was the cost of truth. And the pain didn't stop there. Days later, Marcus limped into the precinct, the weight of his badge no longer armor but target, and dropped the hidden diner footage, along with damning evidence of 2 officers, Dunn and Reese, smirking as Nia bled on the pavement. Within hours, both were fired. Finally, the city whispered. Finally, accountability. Nia posted it all. Her blog, Truth on 8 Mile, exploded. Tens of thousands read it. Thousands more shared it. Her inbox filled with messages. "Keep going. You're the voice we need." For the first time since her jaw was broken, Nia felt powerful. Her father's badge and her words were breaking the machine. She even danced in the kitchen with Marcus that night, their laughter brittle but real. She believed they were winning. Then the lights flickered. A shadow moved outside. Marcus peered through the blinds and froze. "They've got my codes," he whispered. And then the front door exploded inward. 3 masked men stormed the house. One swung a bat, one a knife. Marcus tackled the knife wielder, blood flying. Nia scrambled, grabbed a frying pan, smashed it against the Batman's skull. The leader circled like a vulture, gun drawn, voice low. Tell your father to back off. Then they vanished into the night, tires screeching. Marcus lay bleeding on the floor, gasping. Rollins, it's Rollins! Betrayed again, from the top. Naya held his broken body, her own arm sliced, the frying pan trembling in her grip. She dialed 911. The operator's voice was slow, distant, uncaring. She screamed at them. Still, help came late. Marcus nearly bled out. And the next morning, Naya was no longer a voice for justice. She was a fugitive. Framed again. This time for a bank robbery. Her ID planted. Her face smeared across every screen. Armed and dangerous, the headlines said. A wolf in victim's clothing. And when SWAT raided their safe house, they didn't knock. They shot Marcus again. Beat him. Dragged Nia into the street. Carver's crew had outmaneuvered them again. She wasn't a hero now. She was a headline. A monster. And in a crumbling attic, lit only by fading hope, she uploaded one final leak. Carver's own voice, ordering violence, listing name, whispering kill orders. And when the feds moved, it seemed like the tide had turned. Carver was arrested again. His militia disbanded. Protesters returned to the streets. But Carver wasn't done. He detonated a bomb at the precinct, killed officers, framed her, suspected terrorist Nia Jackson, the Chiron read. Her father nearly died at the hospital, and as feds kicked down the door, Nia ran, heart shattered, truth still heavy in her palms. She tracked Carver to a warehouse, alone. But she wasn't there for revenge. She was there to end it. She found Marcus first. Bloodied, bound, tortured. Carver smirked, gun in hand. You think you won? He hissed. You think the truth matters? She raised her weapon. He raised his. A standoff carved in tragedy. And then he laughed and turned the gun on himself. Pulled the trigger. His blood on her hands. His smirk carved into history. The feds stormed in. She was arrested again. This time for his murder. And yet, she smirked. Not because she won, but because she lived. And the war wasn't over. So, if you're still here, if you've followed Nia this far, if your heart's been cracked open by what she's endured, by what she's still facing, by the truth buried under flame and headlines and blood, then let her know she's not alone. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you believe her voice matters. Smash that like button to help her fight. And subscribe to this channel if you want the world to really see what's been done. Because Nia Jackson didn't ask for war, but she's still standing in it. And now, we stand with her. No one knew exactly what Nia Jackson did the night Senator Travis Callahan's convoy vanished off the grid. But whispers spread like gasoline across Detroit's shadowed streets, igniting questions hotter than truth. They said she broke into a federal database guarded by military-grade encryption. They said she wore a stolen badge, walked through the front door of a federal holding site with her hoodie pulled low and a USB drive tucked in her sock. They said she blackmailed someone high enough to bury her forever, or elevate her name into fire. But what no one could deny was this: the most powerful man behind the curtain, the one pulling the strings on her wrongful arrest, the bank robbery frame-up, the precinct bombing, the fake footage, the doctored emails, the smear campaigns, and the puppet cops like Carver. He disappeared. And it all traced back to her. But how did she even get close? The last time the world had seen Nia, she was in federal custody, mugshot plastered across the nation, her name twisted into domestic threat, her face vilified as the black girl who brought the city to its knees. But in the chaos after Carver's suicide in that warehouse, the lines of reality blurred. One moment she was shackled in a transport van. The next, The van burned, the agents scattered, and Naya gone like smoke. No one could explain it. Some said Marcus Tate, her father, still bleeding from stab wounds and gunfire, pulled favors from old army buddies. Others claimed a rogue hacker collective she once blogged with went full Robin Hood and deleted her from federal databases. All anyone really knew was this: she was gone. And then, weeks later, he was. Senator Travis Callahan. A man untouchable. A face smiling on cable news while puppeteering every layer of the system designed to crush girls like Nia. He was the one who backed Carver's legal defense with dark money. The one who funded the militia under the guise of community patrol. The one whose name was hidden behind encrypted files she barely cracked with shaking hands in the attic of a blown-out safe house. The man who waved American flags while signing orders to paint her as a radical threat. And now, vanished. His security detail, gone. His calendar, wiped. His last known location, a private jet that never took off. Rumors swirled. He's in Dubai. He's in Cuba. He's dead. But no body. No message. Just a hole where power used to live. And behind it all, Naya. The city buzzed with conflicting emotions. Fear. Admiration. Suspicion. Hope. What did she do? How far did she go? Did she cross a line? Did she finally become what they accused her of, just to beat them at their own game? Only a few close to her knew the truth, and they weren't talking. Not because they were loyal, but because they were afraid. Afraid of what she uncovered. Afraid of what she might do next. Because Naya didn't just take down a corrupt senator. She exposed his entire machinery. One by one, documents leaked. Contracts showing how Rollins, the deputy chief, received offshore deposits. Footage of Carver and 2 other officers at a secret meeting, one that had never been scheduled. Internal memos ordering black bag surveillance of Nia's blog, her family, her friends. And then, the masterstroke, encrypted texts showing the senator himself greenlighting the precinct bombing and the frame-up of Nia as a terrorist to justify military intervention in Detroit. And how did she get all that? That's where the real mystery began. Because the data was perfect, verified, untouched. Federal investigators were forced to acknowledge its legitimacy, an act that almost tore the Justice Department in half. But the question wasn't what she leaked. It was how. How did a teenager, battered, hunted, and framed, get her hands on black budget-level intelligence? Some said she traded something. Others swore she had help from a ghost inside the NSA, a rogue agent with a grudge. But one theory burned hotter than the rest. That Naya went to Callahan. That she stood in front of the man who tried to erase her from existence and made him look her in the eye. No one knew what she said. But if you believe the leaked voicemail, the one that surfaced 3 days after his disappearance, then you heard it for yourself. A voice, cold and calm, whispering. The thing about power? When you abuse it, it becomes mine. Her blog, Truth on 8 Mile, resurrected under a new domain, pulsed with raw electricity. She didn't post often now, but when she did, the world watched. Her last entry, titled simply, The Monster in the Mirror. It didn't mention Callahan by name, but it didn't have to. It read like a confession and a dare. They made me into a villain, she wrote. So I found the bigger villain and made him disappear. She ended with a single line. I didn't cross the line. I erased it. Still, the pain hadn't gone away. Tasha was still in the hospital, relearning how to use her arm after the carving. Marcus could barely walk without a cane. The house they'd once called home burned. Nia couldn't go anywhere without a disguise, couldn't use her real name at a coffee shop, couldn't step into a school. She was infamous, a martyr to some, a menace to others. But to herself? She was just a girl who'd been pushed too far, a girl who'd lost everything except her voice. And now that voice echoed louder than ever in every corner of the city. But what would she do next? The feds wanted her in custody. Local cops were split, half admired her, half feared her. The media spun her story depending on the hour. One day she was a hero. The next, a manipulator. But the people, the ones who'd marched for her, who'd cried watching her live stream from behind broken glass, who'd lit candles outside the court, they still believed. And their belief terrified the machine more than anything else. That's why this channel exists. To hold the line when truth is dangerous. To make sure voices like Nia's don't vanish when they dare to rise. So if you're watching this, if your heart's still pounding from the story of the girl who vanished a senator, then do something real. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you believe Nia Jackson didn't go too far. If you believe she went exactly where justice demanded. Smash that like button if you're still rooting for her, if you're still with her, even as the world tries to erase her again. Subscribe if you want to know what comes next, because Nia's war isn't over. The monster may be gone, but the system that created him still breathes. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. Sometimes justice doesn't wear a robe. Sometimes it wears bruises, a hoodie, a smirk in a mugshot. Sometimes justice doesn't knock. It kicks the damn door down. And Nia, she's standing in that doorway. Still, fierce, unapologetic, unbelievable. And if that doesn't deserve a comment of support, what does? Nia Jackson crouched in the attic of a half-collapsed safe house on Detroit's west side, her breath fogging in the cold September air, the splinters of wood digging into her palms as she pressed herself into a corner and waited for a miracle or an ambush, whichever came first. Her arm, still stitched from the last militia attack, pulsed with fire. Her father, Marcus Tate, lay unconscious beside her, blood seeping through the fresh bandages on his side, the scent of burnt cotton and gasoline still clinging to his skin. She had watched him take the knife meant for her, had watched him fall, had dragged him through flames and glass when their last hiding place was turned to ash. And now she sat in this attic, in a stranger's house, in the ruins of the life she used to know, waiting for a betrayal she didn't want to believe would come. Because Jamal Hayes had said the right things. He had looked her father in the eye and said, "I've got your back, Chief." He had handed her a bottle of water, adjusted the blankets around Marcus's legs, checked the windows like a man who truly cared whether they lived to see the next sunrise. He was tall, soft-spoken, with skin that said, "I know the system too," and a badge tucked in his coat that made Nia want to believe again. He said he used to read Truth on 8 Mile, that her words made him believe someone still had fire left. She had smiled at him, trusted him, just a little. But now? As the air shifted, too quiet, too tense, and a black van rolled slowly down the street with its lights off, and engine growling low, something in Nia's chest went cold. Jamal's eyes flicked to the window. He muttered, "Stay low," and moved down the stairs, gun drawn, but not scared. No urgency, just calm. And that was when she knew. He wasn't here to protect them. He was the reason they were here at all. The explosion came seconds later, A grenade burst through the downstairs window, flames licking the walls, swallowing the air in a flash of heat. Nia grabbed Marcus and screamed his name, but he didn't wake. Another blast shook the attic, the floorboards creaking dangerously beneath them. Gunfire cracked below. Shouts, orders. The militia had arrived. Camouflage boots stomped up the stairs. One more grenade burst through the attic window, and that was it. The roof caved, the smoke poured in, and all she could do was drag Marcus behind a fallen beam, cover his body with hers, and pray the fire didn't win. Jamal stood in the doorway then, outlined by flame, mask half slipped, gun lowered, his face expressionless. "Sorry, Chief," he said to Marcus's limp body. "Had to." Then he turned, vanished into the smoke, and let the militia finish what they started. But they didn't. Somehow, they didn't. Nia fought. With blood-slick hands, she clawed her way down the splintered stairs, dragging Marcus inch by inch, coughing through the smoke until her lungs burned. She wrapped a frayed curtain around his shoulder to stop the bleeding, kicked through the back door, stumbled into the night, half dead, fully defiant. Fire lit the sky behind her. Sirens wailed in the distance, too late to matter. She collapsed in an alley with Marcus's body pressed to hers, his pulse faint, but still there. "You stay with me," she whispered. "You don't get to leave. Not like this." Hours later, in the flickering white lights of the emergency room, as surgeons rushed to keep Marcus breathing, Nia sat outside the trauma bay, shaking. Her clothes were soaked with blood, her hands blistered from flame, but her mind was clear. Jamal, Rollins, Carver, Callahan. Every piece of the puzzle now burned into her memory, every betrayal traced back to a system that didn't want her to survive, only to surrender. But she didn't. Instead, she hacked. She pulled the scorched laptop from her backpack, screen cracked, keys melted at the edges, and plugged in the last backup drive she had. The one with Carver's old phone logs, Rollins's payment trail, and the secret audio files Jamal had been too arrogant to delete. And there it was. A call. 2 days before the attack. Jamal's voice. "They're in the safe house. Send the team. I'll keep 'em there." Nia copied the file, sent it to every journalist who hadn't blocked her name. Attached photos of the ruined attic, Marcus's blood, the fire report, a voiceover of her own, raw and unscripted. This is what they do to truth. They burn it. They stab it. They call it dangerous and then kill it in the dark. But I'm still here. My father's still here. And if you're listening, really listening, then it's time to decide which side you're on. She posted it to her blog, reborn, renamed, Still on 8 Mile, and the world cracked open. The audio was undeniable. The fire report, damning. The betrayal, breathtaking. Within 24 hours, federal investigators launched a probe into Rollins's command. Jamal Hayes's badge was suspended. The city erupted. Protests swelled again. This time not just for Nia, but for Marcus. Still in critical care, still hanging on. People lined the hospital lawn with candles. "We believe you," they chanted. "We believe Nia." But for Nia, vindication didn't feel like victory, not yet, because she still saw the fire when she closed her eyes. Still heard Jamal's voice saying, "Had to." Still felt Marcus's blood on her skin. Still smelled the smoke in her hair. She couldn't rest. Couldn't stop. Not until every last piece of this machine was dismantled. Carver's suicide hadn't ended it. Rollins's silence hadn't stopped it. The monster was bigger, deeper, hungrier. And Naya, she was the girl who walked through fire to expose it. So if you're hearing this now, if your heart is breaking for what she endured, know this. Her story didn't end in that attic. It didn't end in flames. It didn't end in blood. It began there. Because from that night forward, Naya didn't just speak truth. She became it. A living refusal. A girl they couldn't erase. She doesn't need your sympathy, but she could use your voice. So drop a number 1 in the comments if you believe what she did matters. Smash that like button if you think surviving betrayal deserves more than silence. Subscribe if you're ready to walk through fire with her, because her next post might burn brighter than anything yet. And if you've ever been lied to, silenced, hurt for telling the truth, Naya sees you. She is you. And she's still fighting. Still on 8 Mile. Still unbroken. Naya Jackson sat hunched on the edge of her bed, her arms wrapped tightly around her aching ribs, the humid Detroit night thick as grief, the boarded-up window letting in no light, only the muffled echoes of a city that had nearly forgotten how to listen. Her jaw, still swollen from Vince Carver's fist, throbbed with every shallow breath. But it wasn't the pain that kept her awake. It was the question. Why wasn't the first video enough? She had gone viral, her blood on concrete looped 100,000 times on angry screens. But still, Carver walked free, still protected by a machine of lies. People called her brave, a fighter, a spark, but it felt like they were clapping for a tragedy instead of helping her survive it. Her blog was flooded with both love and hate, her name chanted in marches and burned in forums. She had lost her school, her safety, her privacy, and still the system pretended it needed more proof. What else do they need? My body on a slab? And that's when she saw it. Pausing the diner video again, for the 1,000th time, her eyes locked on a flicker in the corner of the frame. A reflection. No, a lens. A hidden camera above the door that no one had mentioned, no one had retrieved. Her heart slammed into her ribs. Could it have caught everything? From another angle? The truth they kept twisting might be there, undeniable, untouched. Her hands shook as she laced up her shoes, adrenaline igniting her limbs like electricity. She grabbed her hoodie, slipped past her father, Marcus Tate, chief of police, sleeping with his gun under his pillow, and his trust in the system cracked beyond repair, and vanished into the shadowy streets of the city that had learned her name through violence. The diner stood quiet, its once flickering neon now completely dead. The scent of grease and rust clung to the air. She jimmied the back door with a stolen screwdriver, heart pounding, muscles taut, every nerve expecting the worst. Inside, darkness wrapped around her like a second skin. She climbed onto a counter, pried the casing off the wall, and pulled the black box free. The hidden camera, blinking faintly, still alive. It saw. It remembered. She ran. Her sneakers slapped the pavement like a heartbeat. She didn't stop until she burst back into the house, thrust the device into Marcus's hands, her voice breathless and electric. It caught it, all of it. Marcus plugged it into his laptop. The footage flickered to life, and they watched. Silent, still, as the truth unfurled in high definition. There was no angle to dispute, no obstruction, no ambiguity. Just Carver's rage, Nia's apology, his fist flying, her body dropping, blood on pavement, laughter in the background, every frame a bullet of truth. Marcus stared at the screen, his eyes dark and unreadable, and said only, "This changes everything." By sunrise, he had stormed the DA's office and slammed the footage onto the desk, his badge gleaming, his voice iron. "Revoke his bail. This ends today. Naya stayed behind, her stomach in knots as she refreshed the newsfeed again and again until it finally broke. Vince Carver, remanded into federal custody. Bail revoked. She stared at the screen, her lips trembling into something that looked like a smile, but felt like a sob. They believed me. They finally saw. She sank into the couch, phone in hand, and texted Tasha. We got him. Her fingers shook. Her lungs finally drew a full breath. She had done the impossible, found the hidden camera, unearthed the truth, changed the narrative. Her blog exploded with support. You're a warrior. You're a queen. You're hope. But even in victory, the fear lingered. She'd tasted what the system could do to silence her, and she knew this win would cost her something too. Because even as her father celebrated, as the news looped the footage over and over, as supporters flooded the comments with praise, Nia couldn't shake the feeling that she'd drawn new lines in the sand, lines that would mark her as a bigger target than ever. She thought of every face that had glared at her through cracked cruiser windows, every comment calling her a liar, every threat still sitting in her inbox. But for a moment, just a moment, none of that mattered. She'd found the evidence they couldn't ignore. She had won. Not because she was special, not because she was lucky, but because she refused to be quiet. Because even bleeding, hunted, and exhausted, she fought. And now, if you're hearing this, if you've followed her story this far, don't let her stand alone. This girl walked into a crime scene, risked arrest, exposure, everything, just to pull the truth from the shadows. She stood up when the world told her to sit down. She exposed a monster that the badge tried to shield. She is 17. Black. Female. And more courageous than half the people paid to protect her. So if her fight moved you, if it made your chest tighten or your heart race, don't scroll past this moment. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you believe Naya deserves more than just survival. She deserves justice. Smash that like button to show you stand with her, because courage this loud needs an echo. And hit subscribe so you don't miss what she does next. Because trust me, this isn't the end of her fight. It's only the beginning. She was never asking for fame. She was never asking for war. She was asking to be heard. And now the world has heard her. What it does next? That's on us. Absolutely. Below is a 1,000-word dramatic paragraph version of Idea 8, The Secret Weapon, Nia's blog that took down the precinct, written with intrigue, mystery, and unbelievable risks, pulling the audience into the suspense of what the character did, and calling on them to comment in support. They never saw it coming. Not the officers, not the union, not the politicians who shrugged off her bruises like she was just another black girl making noise. While the city tried to erase her name, Nia Jackson was building something in silence, typing through broken sleep and fresh wounds, her left arm still bandaged from the safe house fire, her father Marcus limping in and out of hospital rooms after the militia attack, his badge buried under doubt. They thought she'd gone dark. They thought they'd buried her spirit under lawsuits, expulsion notices, and a cell that reeked of steel and judgment. But Nia hadn't disappeared. She was writing, building, hacking into a system they never dreamed a teenager could touch. Truth on 8 Mile, her blog, re-emerged on a new server, hidden behind layers of encryption, masked IPs, fake locations pinging from Malaysia to Brazil to Chicago. The first post was simple. You framed me. You stabbed my father. You firebombed our truth. Now it's my turn. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just dropped files. Names. Dates. Confidential transfers between precinct officers and militia donors. Settlement documents buried under gag orders. Unpublished footage from the diner's second camera. And then, audio. Crisp, cold, undeniable. Officer Reese laughing over her bloodied body. Deputy Chief Rollins calling her a useful spark in a meeting he thought no one recorded. Each post hit the city like a detonation. Within 48 hours, the blog reached 50,000 shares. Within 72, the feds reopened their case. But how had she gotten it? That's where the mystery lit fire. No one could trace the source of the internal files, not even the precinct's own IT department. Word on the street said she found a flash drive taped beneath a desk in the break room, planted there by a ghost from inside. Others claimed she'd posed as a janitor for 2 weeks, slipping past patrol officers with a mop and badge borrowed from a cousin. Some swore she bribed a hacker from the East Side with her grandmother's wedding ring and climbed through a courthouse vent to plug into their secured network. And the craziest rumor? That she built a back door into the precinct database months earlier, while still locked in her holding cell, by whispering commands to a hacked tablet she snuck in through a lawyer's briefcase. Nia never confirmed or denied any of it. Her only response was another post. You wanted to know how? You should have asked why. And why was written into every keystroke. Because they slashed her tires, carved her best friend's arm, kicked down her door, labeled her a terrorist, called her a liar. And she didn't get to fight back with fists or lawyers. She had her words, her data, her truth. So she weaponized it. One click at a time. As the posts went live, the precinct trembled. Officers quit. A captain resigned. The union's press secretary disappeared from public view. Marcus, once sidelined, was reinstated. But it wasn't his badge that brought them down. It was her blog. Her voice. The voice they tried to silence with flames and jail cells. She posted at midnight, her fingers trembling over keys still slick with sweat. Every upload came with a cost. She moved hiding spots weekly, used burner phones to contact her father, slept with a fire extinguisher beside her bed. At one point, she shaved her head, dyed her eyebrows, walked through downtown in a delivery uniform just to avoid facial recognition cameras. And yet, she never stopped. Because behind every leak was a name like hers, someone arrested for nothing, beaten for walking, burned for breathing. And she wasn't just writing for her justice. She was writing for theirs. Then came the final post. No one knew she had it. A 12-minute audio clip, recorded 3 months before the diner assault. A meeting inside a quiet room on the 5th floor of the precinct. Carver. Rollins. A state senator. Talking in code, but not enough. Planning the arrest. She's loud. She's a problem. Make it look routine. If it escalates, it escalates. Nia's name was mentioned once, quietly, but clearly. Make her an example. And then the laughter. That clip brought the House down. Within hours, the City Council demanded a federal hearing. The DOJ launched a full audit. The state senator deleted his Twitter. The precinct shuttered the entire 5th floor for renovations. And Nia? She sat in a public library 2 cities over, hoodie up, hands shaking, watching it all unfold through a cracked screen. The people rallied again. Not just for her, but because of her. She became a blueprint for resistance, for surviving, for building truth in a world designed to break it. And still, she never revealed how she got the tape, never said who gave it to her, never told anyone the names of the insiders who sent files from private emails, who left manila folders taped to bus benches, who whispered logins at vigils and walked away before she could say thank you. Because Nia understood. The truth doesn't need permission. It just needs a place to live. And truth on 8 Mile? That was her place, her weapon, her home. So now, if you're watching this, if you've followed Nia's story through the blood, the fire, the cuffs, and the code, don't just scroll past. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you believe truth isn't dangerous. It's necessary. Smash that like button if Nia's fight moved you, if her blog shook you, if her courage reminded you what one person can do. And hit subscribe to this channel, because we're not done. Not even close. There are more stories to tell, more systems to crack, more fires to survive. Nia Jackson was supposed to vanish, but instead, she wrote her way into history, and we're still turning the pages. Nia Jackson stood on the courthouse steps, the autumn breeze lifting her curls as the city exhaled with her. This time, there were no flames, no mobs, no slurs shouted from passing cars, just a sea of people, some crying, some clapping, all watching, as the judge's ruling echoed through the plaza. All charges dropped. Nia Jackson is free. For the first time since her life had been flipped, scorched, framed, and dragged through the gutter of lies, the system had finally spoken in her favor. And even though it came years late, scarred by betrayals, loss, and unspeakable pain, it came. The evidence she risked her life to find, the files she smuggled from the ashes of a firebombed attic. The truth she spoke even with her jaw wired shut. It had all led here. And now she stood not as a fugitive or a symbol, but as a survivor. A name no longer weaponized, but honored. She looked into the cameras, those same lenses that once twisted her story into fiction, and smiled. Not out of pride, but because she made it. And in that smile was every girl who had ever been silenced, doubted, punished for speaking when they were supposed to shrink. The crowd parted as Marcus Tate emerged beside her, still limping from the wounds he took in the safe house, still holding his badge with cautious faith. He squeezed her shoulder and whispered, "You did it, baby." And Nia, who had been called thug, liar, terrorist, and threat, simply nodded. She didn't need to shout. Her freedom was louder than any scream. The people had rallied for her, protested, fought. The feds had taken down Rollins and Carver's militia. Senator Callahan's network had crumbled under her leaked audio, and now she could walk through Detroit not in hiding, but as herself. Head high, scars visible, power undeniable. Truth on 8 Mile, her blog-turned movement, had become a national platform for exposing injustice, mentoring students, protecting whistleblowers. The girl who once sat in a jail cell fearing the world had forgotten her was now a keynote speaker at schools and a youth justice fellow building community truth labs in Black neighborhoods. She had turned her pain into purpose, and not for fame, not for payback, but because someone had to. So what does this story teach us? That when the system fails you, you don't become the villain they expect. You become the voice they can't silence. That courage isn't a loud moment. It's 100 quiet decisions to keep going when quitting would be easier. That truth takes time, but it wins if you hold on long enough. And that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming everything they swore you couldn't be. Strong, free, unshakable. Nia's story is more than just her own. It's a mirror held up to every community that's ever had to scream to be heard. It's a lesson to every bystander that silence is a side. And it's a reminder that young Black girls don't just survive. They rise. Even when the odds are bent, even when the media twists, even when the system sharpens its claws. So if her fight moved you, if you saw yourself in her silence, her fire, her rise, don't just scroll past. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you believe truth still matters. Smash that like button if Naya's journey gave you hope or reminded you what strength really looks like. And hit subscribe to this channel to hear more powerful, raw stories like hers, because Nia's story may have ended here, but there are thousands more we need to tell. Thank you for standing with her, for believing when the world tried not to. And remember this, sometimes justice comes late, but when it comes, it changes everything. Stay loud, stay lit, and never stop fighting for what's right. Because like Nia Jackson proved, even the darkest systems can't stop the brightest truths.